Captain Sam Harris looked out the large window of his spaceship. The stars shone brightly against the black emptiness of space. He had been in command of the Earth Defense Fleet's flagship for 5 years now. In that time, he had faced pirates, negotiated with alien traders, and even survived a dangerous solar storm. But nothing had prepared him for what appeared on his screens today. "Sir, the sensors are picking up something big," said Officer Diane Miller. Her fingers moved quickly across her control panel. "It's not like anything we've seen before." Sam walked over to her station and looked at the readings. A chill ran down his spine. The objects approaching the edge of their solar system were massive. There were hundreds of them, maybe thousands. "How long until they reach us?" he asked. Their current speed 3 days, Diane replied. Her normally calm voice had an edge to it. Lieutenant Joe Bennett rushed onto the bridge. His face was pale. As the head of the team that studied alien life, he rarely showed fear. Today was different. "Captain, we're getting messages from the Galactic Council," Joe said. "All member species are evacuating their outer colonies. They're pulling back to their home systems." "Why?" Sam asked. "What are they running from?" Joe placed a small device on the main table. It projected a 3-dimensional image in the air. The image showed strange ships, black as the space around them. They moved in perfect formation, like a single organism rather than separate vessels. "They call themselves the Void Collective," Joe explained. "The Council species have encountered them before on the far side of the galaxy. They don't take over planets or enslave populations, they consume them." "Consume? What does that mean?" Sam asked. "They absorb all life energy. They leave behind only empty shells of planets. No life, not even bacteria, survives their passage." The bridge fell silent. Earth had only joined the Galactic Council 15 years ago. Humans were still new to space travel compared to other species who had been exploring the stars for thousands of years. Most alien races had colonies spread across multiple star systems. If one planet fell, they had others to retreat to. Humanity was different. Despite having small outposts on Mars and a few moons of Jupiter and Saturn, Earth was still their only true home. 7 billion people lived on the blue planet. They had nowhere else to go. "The Council is ordering all species to fall back," Joe continued. "They believe that if they combine their forces near the galactic core, they might stand a chance." Sam walked back to the window. From his position in orbit, he could see Earth below. Clouds swirled over blue oceans. Green and brown land masses spread across the surface. It was beautiful. It was home. "What are our orders, sir?" asked Officer Rick Summers from his position at the weapons station. Sam thought for a moment. The logical choice was to follow the Council's lead, run and hope for the best. But humanity had never been known for making the logical choice when their home was threatened. "Send a message to Earth Command," Sam said finally. "Tell them what we're facing, then send a reply to the Council." "What should the reply say?" Diane asked. "Tell them that humanity acknowledges their retreat order, but we will be staying to defend our home." A nervous energy filled the bridge. Everyone understood what this meant. They would face the darkness alone. "Should we begin evacuation of non-essential personnel?" asked Lieutenant Commander Maria Ellis, his second in command. Sam shook his head. "No evacuations. We'll need every person we can get. What we need is information. Joe, gather everything the Council has on these void ships. Their strengths, weaknesses, anything that might help us." "Yes, sir," Joe said, hurrying away. "Diane, open channels to all Earth defense ships in the system. I want them all heading back to Earth orbit within 24 hours. All of them, sir? Even the border patrols?" "All of them. And contact the Mars and Jupiter colonies. Tell them to send every ship with weapons capability." Sam turned to Rick at the weapons station. "Begin running simulations. I want to know how our weapons will perform against these void ships." "We don't have much data to base the simulations on," Rick pointed out. "Use what we have. Make educated guesses for the rest. We need to be prepared." The next few hours were a blur of activity. Messages flew back and forth between the ship and Earth Command. Scientists and military leaders debated strategies. Engineers began modifying weapon systems based on the limited information they had about the enemy. 6 hours after they had first detected the Void Collective, Sam found himself in a video conference with leaders from around the world. Their faces showed a mix of fear and determination. "The other council races are retreating because they have that option," said the president of the United Earth Alliance. "We don't. Earth is our home, our only real home. If we are to fall, we will fall fighting." "What do the other species think of our decision?" asked the Chinese premier. Sam cleared his throat. "They think we're making a mistake. The Arcturians offered to take 1 million of our people with them. The Pleiadians offered 2 million. 3 million out of 7 billion, the Indian Prime Minister said softly. "A drop in the ocean. Some of them respect our choice," Sam added. "The Centaurians have left behind some of their weapons technology. It might help us." The meeting continued for another hour. By the end, the decision was unanimous. Humanity would stand their ground. When Sam returned to the bridge, he found his crew working with renewed purpose. The initial shock had worn off, replaced by grim determination. "Message from Earth Command, sir," Diane called out. "All defense ships have been ordered to return. The lunar bases are being converted to battle stations. Civilian evacuation to underground shelters begins tomorrow." Sam nodded. "Status of the enemy fleet?" "No change in course or speed. Still 3 days out." Sam looked again at Earth through the window. In 3 days, everything could change. In 3 days, humanity might face extinction. But they would face it together, and they would face it with courage. "Send a message to all ships in our fleet," he said. "Tell them to prepare for the hardest fight of their lives, but also tell them this. When every other species ran, humanity stood their ground. And as long as we stand together, we still have hope." Around him, the crew straightened their backs and returned to their work with renewed purpose. 3 days wasn't much time to prepare for the end of the world, but it was all they had, and they would make the most of it. General Kate Warren stood in the Lunar Command Center, watching the holographic display of Earth's defenses. The planet was surrounded by a protective sphere of human ships. 103 warships of various sizes formed the first line of defense. It wasn't much compared to what other alien species had commanded before they fled, but it was everything humanity had. Kate had been a soldier for 25 years. She had fought in wars on Earth and led the first military mission to Mars. But this was different. This time they were fighting for the survival of their entire species. "The Arcturians have finished leaving the Proxima station," said Lieutenant Frank Porter, her aide. "They left behind some of their weapon systems as a gift before they departed." Kate nodded, her face showing no emotion. "At least some of our allies have a conscience." All around her, scientists and soldiers worked frantically. They had only 2 days left before the Void Collective arrived. 2 days to prepare for a battle against an enemy they barely understood. Dr. Olivia Cruz walked quickly across the room, holding a tablet in her hands. As head of the research division, she had been working non-stop to understand the enemy they faced. "General, we've decoded more of the data the Pleiadians shared before they left," Olivia said, her voice tense. "The collective isn't just an invasion force, there's something entirely different." Kate took the tablet and looked at the images and text. "They consume energy signatures? What does that mean?" "Not just any energy. They feed on conscious energy. Minds, souls, whatever you want to call it." Olivia pointed to a graph on the screen. "That's why the other species ran. The collective doesn't want our resources or our planets. They want us, our consciousness, our essence." Kate stared at the data, trying to make sense of it. In the corner of the room, a large screen showed a meeting of the Galactic Council in progress. The alien representatives were arguing loudly, most of them supporting a full retreat to the center of the galaxy, where their combined forces might have a chance. "They think we're crazy for staying," Kate said, watching their animated movements. "Maybe we are," Olivia replied. "Or maybe we're just too stubborn to give up our home without a fight." Kate turned to Frank. "Send a message to all ships. Tell them what we're really fighting for. This isn't just about Earth anymore. We're humanity's last line of defense. If we fall, there's nowhere left to run. As Frank hurried away to send the message, Kate looked back at the screen showing Earth. Blue oceans, white clouds, green and brown land. 7 billion people who were depending on them to keep them safe. Do you think we have a chance? Olivia asked quietly. Kate didn't answer immediately. The truth was, she didn't know. Based on what they knew about the Void Collective, their chances were slim. But humans had faced impossible odds before and survived. We have to try, she said finally. That's all we can do. On the destroyer USS Defiant, Captain Greg Mitchell read the message from Lunar Command. The knowledge that they were fighting against beings who consumed consciousness itself was disturbing, but it didn't change their mission. They would defend Earth, no matter what. All weapons systems check complete, reported Lisa Young, his weapons officer. Kinetic rounds loaded and ready, energy weapons at full capacity. Greg nodded. Good. How are the new shields the Arcturians left us? Engineering says they're integrated with our systems, but they haven't been tested in battle. Well, we're about to find out how well they work, Greg said grimly. The hours passed quickly as the fleet made final preparations. Every ship was positioned according to their strengths. The heavier warships formed a front line, while faster, more agile vessels waited behind them, ready to attack any enemy ships that broke through. Back on Earth, people gathered in underground shelters. Schools, offices, and homes were empty as the population sought safety deep beneath the surface. They all knew what was coming. They all knew that their lives depended on the brave men and women in the ships above them. In orbit around the moon, Sam Harris's flagship, the Resolute, held position. As the highest-ranking captain in the fleet, he would coordinate the defense. Enemy fleet has entered the solar system, Diane Miller reported from her station. They've just passed Pluto's orbit. Sam took a deep breath. Send the alert to all ships, battle stations. Across the fleet, alarms sounded as crews rushed to their positions. Engineers made last-minute checks of systems. Weapons officers loaded ammunition. Pilots climbed into fighters ready to launch at a moment's notice. The void ships have accelerated, Diane said, her voice steady despite the fear everyone felt. New estimated arrival time, 6 hours. 6 hours. Less than a workday. Less time than it took to fly across the Pacific Ocean. That was all they had left before facing an enemy that had sent every other advanced civilization in this part of the galaxy running in terror. Sam opened a channel to the entire fleet. This is Captain Harris. In 6 hours we will face the greatest threat humanity has ever known. The Void Collective has consumed countless worlds before ours. They think we will be easy prey, because we stand alone. He paused, looking at the faces of his crew. But they're wrong. We are not alone. We stand together. Every nation, every person on Earth is with us. And united, humanity has overcome every challenge we've ever faced. His words were transmitted to every ship in the fleet, to the lunar base, and to the shelters on Earth. Millions of people listened as he continued. The other species ran because they had somewhere to run to. We don't. Earth is our home. Our only home. And we will defend it with everything we have. When the Void Collective arrives, show them what happens when they threaten our planet. Show them that humanity does not run. Humanity stands and fights. A cheer went up across the fleet. It was a small moment of unity before the storm that was coming. In the Lunar Command Center, General Kate Warren finished reviewing the final defense plans. Everything that could be done had been done. Now, they could only wait. General, Frank called from his station. We're detecting unusual readings from the Void Fleet. They're changing formation. Kate hurried over to look at his screen. The enemy ships, which had been traveling in a tight group, were spreading out into a wide net. They're planning to surround us, she said. They want to cut off any possible escape routes. As if we were planning to escape, Olivia said, joining them. Kate's eyes narrowed. No, we're not running. Send word to Captain Harris. Tell him to prepare the fleet for our first strike. If the Void wants a fight, we'll give them one they'll never forget. As the message was sent, Kate looked once more at the image of Earth on the main screen. In a few hours, the fate of humanity would be decided. But of one thing she was certain: when every species ran, humanity stood their ground. And they would keep standing, no matter what came next. The first wave of void ships hit Earth's defenses like a black wave crashing against rocks. Captain Greg Mitchell of the USS Defiant watched in horror as 3 Earth vessels were swallowed by darkness, their hulls crumpling as if crushed by giant, invisible hands. "Energy weapons having no effect," shouted Lisa Young from the weapons station. Her fingers moved quickly across the control panel. "They're absorbing everything we throw at them." Greg gritted his teeth. This was bad. Energy weapons were their main defense, but he wasn't ready to give up. "Switch to kinetic rounds," he ordered. "If they want to eat energy, let's see how they handle good old-fashioned metal." The Defiant shook as its railguns fired, launching solid metal rods at incredible speeds. To Greg's surprise and satisfaction, the projectiles tore through one of the smaller void ships, causing it to break apart into swirling fragments of darkness. He quickly opened a channel to the rest of the fleet. "All ships, this is Captain Mitchell. Energy weapons are useless. Switch to kinetic ammunition." Across the battlefield, humanity's ships adjusted their tactics. It wasn't much, but it gave them a fighting chance. The Void Collective seemed confused by the change in strategy, their perfect formations breaking as they tried to adapt. On the lunar base, Dr. Olivia Cruz monitored the battle with growing interest. She noticed something strange about how the enemy ships moved. "Do you see that?" she asked General Kate Warren, pointing to the movement patterns on the screen. "They're not just ships. They're extensions of a single mind." Kate leaned forward, studying the display. "How can you tell?" "Look at their response patterns. They move like a swarm of bees, but there are delays when we do something unexpected, almost as if they need to check with a central brain before reacting." Kate's eyes narrowed. "If we're fighting a hive mind, then there must be a queen or leader. Find it." As the battle raged on, humanity learned and adapted faster than their enemy expected. What they lacked in technology, they made up for with quick thinking and pure determination. For every human ship that was lost, they destroyed 2 enemy vessels. But the Void Collective's numbers seemed endless, pouring through space like an unstoppable flood of darkness. By the 6th hour of fighting, half of Earth's fleet was gone, but they were still fighting. In the command center of the Resolute, Captain Sam Harris made a difficult decision. "We need to change our strategy. We can't win by just shooting at them one by one." He turned to Joe Bennett, who had been analyzing the enemy throughout the battle. "You said they feed on conscious energy, right? Do they have consciousness themselves?" Joe looked up from his screens. "Based on what we've seen, yes. They appear to share a group mind, but it's still a form of consciousness." Sam nodded slowly, an idea forming. "And Dr. Cruz believes there's a central mind controlling them all. What if we could find it and disrupt it somehow?" "That might work," Joe said, his eyes widening. "If we could confuse or damage the central mind, the rest might lose their coordination." Sam opened a secure channel to the Lunar Command Center. "General Warren, I have an idea, but it's risky." On the screen, Kate's face showed the strain of the last 6 hours. "At this point, Captain, I'm open to risky ideas." Sam explained his plan. They would use the remaining ships to create a gap in their defensive line, appearing to show weakness. If the hive mind thought it saw an opening to Earth, it might send its central controller, or at least reveal where it was hiding. "Once we identify the central ship," Sam continued, "we hit it with everything we have left." Kate considered the plan. It was dangerous. It meant deliberately weakening their defenses around Earth. But they were losing the battle as it was. "Tui," she said finally. "But be ready to close that gap quickly if things go wrong." Sam nodded. "Yes, ma'am." The plan was put into action immediately. Several ships from Earth's defensive sphere moved away, creating what looked like a hole in their defenses. At first, nothing happened. The Void Collective continued its attack on the existing ships. Then, slowly, the enemy began to shift. A group of Void ships moved toward the gap, led by a vessel larger than any they had seen before. It was massive, at least 3 times the size of Earth's largest warship. "That's it," Sam said, watching the movement. "That's their command ship." He gave new orders to the fleet. All ships that still had functional engines were to ignore the smaller Void vessels and focus on the large one. Every available fighter was launched, armed with whatever weapons remained. Major Ryan Cooper led a squadron of 12 fighters toward the massive Void flagship. His hands were steady on the controls even as his heart raced. "Remember," he said to his pilots, "aim for any spot that looks different from the rest of the hull. We're looking for weaknesses." The fighters zoomed through the battlefield, dodging enemy fire and the remains of destroyed ships. As they got closer to the flagship, Ryan felt a strange pressure in his mind, like something cold and ancient was looking at him. "Is anyone else feeling that?" asked his wingman, Amy Parker. "It's like something's in my head." "Ignore it," Ryan ordered. "That's how they get to you. Focus on the mission." The fighters split into 3 groups, each approaching the flagship from a different direction. They fired everything they had: missiles, railgun rounds, even the small energy weapons that had proven useless before. Most of it seemed to have no effect on the massive black ship. But then Amy's voice came through the radio, excited. "I found something. There's a spot near what looks like an engine port. The hull reacted when I hit it." Ryan quickly turned his fighter in that direction. He saw what Amy meant: a section of the hull that seemed to ripple when hit, unlike the rest of the ship, which simply absorbed attacks. "All fighters, focus fire on that spot," he ordered. The fighters regrouped and concentrated their attack on the weak point Amy had found. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then a crack appeared in the black surface, spreading like ice breaking on a pond. Bright white energy spilled out from inside the ship. Ryan felt the pressure in his mind increase painfully. The Void ship was reacting to their attack, and it wasn't happy. "We've heard it," he said through gritted teeth. "Keep firing." Back on the Resolute, Sam watched the battle with growing hope. The fighters had found a weakness in the enemy flagship. Now they needed to exploit it fully. "Direct all remaining ships to target the area those fighters are attacking," he ordered. "Everything we've got right now." Across what remained of Earth's fleet, ships turned their weapons toward the Void flagship. Kinetic rounds, missiles, and whatever else they had left were fired in a massive coordinated strike. The Void flagship's hull cracked further, more white energy pouring out. Then, with a silent flash that somehow everyone felt rather than saw, the massive ship broke apart. The pressure that had been building in everyone's minds vanished instantly. Around the battlefield, the smaller Void ships suddenly stopped moving in their coordinated patterns. Some drifted aimlessly, while others began to move erratically, crashing into each other. "We did it," Sam whispered, hardly daring to believe what he was seeing. "We took out their central mind." The remaining human ships quickly took advantage of the enemy's confusion, destroying as many of the now disorganized Void vessels as they could. Some of the enemy ships began to retreat, fleeing back the way they had come. After 3 more hours of fighting, it was over. The space around Earth was littered with the remains of both human and Void ships. Of the original 103 vessels in Earth's fleet, only 41 remained. But they had won. Against all odds, humanity had stood their ground and survived. 1 week after the battle, Earth was still celebrating. News of humanity's victory had spread across the planet. People came out of their underground shelters, looking up at the sky with new hope. For the first time in days, they could see the stars without fear. But in the Lunar Command Center, General Kate Warren knew the celebration might be short-lived. She stood before a group of military leaders and scientists, her new metal arm gleaming under the bright lights. She had lost her real arm during the battle when part of the base was damaged, but she considered it a small price to pay for victory. "We won the battle," she said to the group, "but the war is far from over. The ships we fought were just a small part of the Void Collective's forces. We need to prepare for their return. Dr. Olivia Cruz stepped forward with her tablet. The dark circles under her eyes showed she had barely slept since the battle ended. We've been studying the remains of the Void ships, she said. Their technology is unlike anything we've seen before. But we're learning from it. She showed images of the black material that made up the enemy ships. This substance absorbs energy. That's why our energy weapons didn't work against them. But it has weaknesses too. Kate nodded. How long until they return? Olivia looked at her data. Based on their communication signals we intercepted, I estimate 6 months, maybe less. They'll send a much larger force next time. The room was quiet as everyone took in this news. 6 months wasn't much time to prepare for another attack, especially with half their fleet destroyed. Then we have work to do, Kate said firmly. Double the production of ships and weapons. Focus on kinetic weapons since we know they work, and I want research into that weak spot the fighters found on their flagship. As the meeting ended, Kate walked to the window overlooking Earth. The planet looked peaceful from here, but she knew that peace was fragile. Humanity had stood their ground once. Could they do it again? On Earth, Captain Sam Harris was in a hospital in New York. His ship, the Resolute, had survived the battle, but not without damage. Sam had been injured when part of the bridge collapsed, breaking 3 of his ribs. A nurse turned on the television in his room. The news showed people celebrating in streets around the world. Then the scene changed to show a spaceship landing at the United Nations headquarters. Sam sat up straighter, ignoring the pain in his side. He recognized that ship. It belonged to the Arcturians, one of the alien species that had fled before the battle. The door to his room opened, and Joe Bennett walked in. He looked tired but excited. Have you seen the news? Joe asked. The Arcturians are back, and they're not the only ones. Ships from 5 different council species have returned to our system. Sam raised an eyebrow. They ran away when we needed help. Why come back now? Because we did what they thought was impossible, Joe said, sitting in the chair next to the bed. We stood against the Void Collective and won. Now they're interested in what we know. Sam looked back at the television. The camera showed an Arcturian delegate stepping out of the ship. The alien was tall and thin with pale blue skin that seemed to glow slightly. It was met by human leaders who looked very small next to it. What do they want? Sam asked. Information, Joe replied. They want to know how we defeated the flagship, and they're offering something in return. What? Technology, help rebuilding our fleet, and a seat on the Council's inner leadership group. Sam whistled softly. The inner leadership of the Galactic Council was made up of the oldest and most advanced species. For humanity to be offered a seat was a big deal. What did our leaders say, he asked. Joe smiled. They said they'd think about it, but first, they want guarantees that the other species won't run again if the Void returns. In another part of the hospital, Major Ryan Cooper was visiting the other pilots who had survived the attack on the Void flagship. Of the 12 who had flown the mission, only 7 had made it back. Ryan still had bandages on his hands from burns he'd received when his fighter's controls overheated during the battle. They're calling us heroes, he told Amy Parker, who was sitting up in her hospital bed. There's talk of medals and ceremonies once we're all out of here. Amy shook her head. I don't feel like a hero. I was just doing my job. We all were, Ryan agreed. But what we did made a difference. Finding that weak spot saved Earth. Amy looked out the window at the New York skyline. Do you think they'll come back? The Void? Ryan didn't answer right away. He had been asking himself the same question since the battle ended. Yes, he said finally. I think they will, and I think they'll be angry. Then we'll be ready for them, Amy said, her voice stronger now. If they come back, we'll beat them again. Ryan nodded, but he wasn't as confident as he tried to appear. He had felt the alien presence in his mind during the battle. It was ancient and powerful, and it had been surprised by humanity's resistance. Next time, it would be prepared. Back at the lunar base, Olivia was working late in her lab. The remains of a void ship were spread out on tables around her. She had been studying them for days, trying to understand how they worked. Her computer beeped, showing results from her latest test. She looked at the screen and froze. The readings couldn't be right. She ran the test again and got the same result. She quickly called General Warren, her hands shaking slightly as she pressed the buttons on her phone. "General, I need you to come to the lab right away," she said when Kate answered. "I've found something about the void ships. Something important." Kate arrived 10 minutes later. Olivia showed her the test results on the computer screen. "The ship fragments are still active," Olivia explained. "Not alive in the way we understand life, but aware. They're still receiving and sending signals." Kate stared at the screen. "What kind of signals? And to where?" "I don't know yet. But if these pieces are still connected to the Void Collective, somehow, then they know exactly what happened here," Kate finished for her. "And they know what we did to defeat them." Olivia nodded grimly. "Which means that when they come back, they'll be ready for us," Kate said. "We need to call an emergency meeting. We have less time to prepare than we thought." As they hurried from the lab, neither of them noticed a small piece of the void ship material vibrate slightly on the table behind them. Its black surface rippled like water, as if responding to an unseen touch from very far away. 3 months after the battle, Earth had changed. Ships from a dozen alien species now orbited the planet alongside the rebuilt human fleet. The skies were busier than ever before as shuttles moved between Earth and the visiting vessels, carrying diplomats, scientists, and engineers. President Elaine Foster stood on a platform overlooking the newly expanded United Nations Plaza in New York. Representatives from every nation on Earth gathered alongside alien visitors. It was a historic day, the formal signing of the alliance treaty between humanity and the returned members of the Galactic Council. "Today we stand not just as humans, but as partners in a greater community," President Foster said to the crowd. 3 months ago we faced extinction alone. Now we prepare together." Behind her stood a monument of dark granite with the names of those who had died in the battle. 4,237 names were etched into its surface. Among them were the names of pilots, ship captains, engineers, and lunar base personnel who had given their lives so that Earth might survive. Ambassador Zorth of the Arcturian Confederation stepped forward when the president finished speaking. The tall blue alien's skin glowed with shifting patterns as it addressed the crowd. "When every species ran, humanity stood their ground," Zorth said, its voice translated through the neural interfaces everyone wore. "You showed us what we had forgotten, that some battles must be fought no matter the odds." The alien gestured to the delegation behind it. "That is why we have returned, not just as allies, but as students. We have much to learn from each other if we are to face what comes next." General Kate Warren watched from the side of the stage, her new prosthetic arm now fully integrated with her nervous system thanks to Pleiadian medical technology. Beside her stood Dr. Olivia Cruz, who had been named head of the new interspecies defense initiative. "Do you trust them?" Kate asked quietly, nodding toward the alien representatives. "After they abandoned us?" Olivia's face showed her uncertainty. "Not completely. But we need them. Their technology, their knowledge of the Void Collective. And they need us too now." "Because we stood our ground," Kate said. "Because we stood our ground," Olivia agreed. After the ceremony, Kate and Olivia traveled to the orbital shipyard that now circled Earth. It was a massive structure, built in just 3 months with the help of alien technology. Inside, new warships were under construction, vessels that combined human design with technology from a half-dozen alien species. Captain Sam Harris met them at the docking bay. His injuries had healed, and he now wore the uniform of the new United Earth Defense Force. "Welcome to Phoenix Station," he said as they stepped off the shuttle. "I think you'll be impressed with the progress." He led them through the shipyard, showing them the new vessels taking shape. They were sleeker than the old Earth ships, their hulls made from materials that could withstand much more damage. The Arcturians provided the shield technology, Sam explained, pointing to a nearly complete ship. "The Pleiadians gave us improved engine designs, but the weapons are all ours." "Kinetic weapons?" Kate asked. Sam nodded. Yes, but much more powerful now. And we've incorporated what we learned about the Void ship's weak points. Every vessel is equipped with scanners that can detect those vulnerabilities. They stopped at a viewing window overlooking the largest construction bay. Inside was a massive ship, easily 3 times the size of any vessel humanity had built before. The Defender, Sam said with pride. Our new flagship. She'll be ready in 2 more months. Kate studied the ship with a critical eye. Will it be enough? If what Olivia discovered is true, the Void Collective knows exactly what happened here. They'll be prepared for our tactics next time. That's why we're not just preparing one strategy, Olivia said. We're preparing a dozen. The Void may be a hive mind, but that's also their weakness. They're not as adaptable as we are. As they continued their tour, a young lieutenant hurried up to them, her face serious. General Warren, Dr. Cruz, Captain Harris, you're needed in the command center immediately. Long-range sensors have detected something. The 3 of them followed her quickly through the station to a large room filled with screens and control panels. Officer Diane Miller, who had survived the battle aboard the Resolute, looked up as they entered. We picked this up about an hour ago, she said, bringing up an image on the main screen. It showed what looked like a tear in the fabric of space, a swirling vortex of darkness near the edge of the solar system. What are we looking at? Kate asked, though she already feared she knew the answer. A wormhole, Olivia said, stepping closer to the screen. Artificial. Creating something like this would require enormous power. The Void Collective? Sam asked. Olivia nodded. Most likely. They found another way to reach us, one that lets them bypass the normal travel routes. Kate's expression hardened. How long until something comes through? Hard to say. The wormhole is still stabilizing. Could be days. Could be hours. Alert all ships, Kate ordered. I want every available vessel in defensive position within 6 hours, and notify the council representatives. As the command center burst into activity, Sam moved to stand next to Kate and Olivia by the window. Outside, they could see Earth, floating serenely against the blackness of space. We knew they would come back, Sam said quietly, just not so soon. We're not ready, Olivia admitted. The new fleet is only half built. The defensive systems around Earth aren't fully operational yet. Kate looked at her, then back at the busy command center where humans worked alongside, alien allies preparing for the coming battle. We weren't ready last time either, she said. But we stood our ground and fought anyway. And this time, we're not alone. Sam nodded. When every species ran, humanity stood their ground. Now they stand with us. The 3 of them turned back to the window, watching as ships began to move into defensive formations around Earth. The next few days would determine the fate not just of humanity, but of every species that had joined them in their stand against the darkness. In the distance, the stars seemed to dim slightly as if sensing what was coming. But Earth shone brightly, a blue jewel in the vastness of space, home to a species that had faced extinction and refused to run. A species that had taught the galaxy what courage looked like. A species that, when faced with impossible odds, stood their ground.